Well, hi there, FME friends. How's your day going? I hope it's going well, whether it's the end of the evening for you or the very start of the day. Thank you for tuning in and watching this demo today of what are we watching today? We're looking at conditional parameters in FME 2023. My name's Mark, if you don't know me. I don't have anybody presenting with me today. It's just me and no, even the cats have deserted me. So you've just got me today, but that's all good. I've got a few demos to show you, a few different things we can talk about for conditional parameters, how they work, and all of that sort of thing. So please. Any questions you've got, just put them into the chat window and I'll try and answer them as best I can. And thanks again for tuning in. So, okay, well, let's get started then, shall we? So I'm hoping that you know what user parameters are in general. User parameters are where we want to run a workspace or we want an end user to run a workspace and we want to prompt them to enter a value of some sort. Like in this workspace, I've got a couple of parameters. They are the source data and the destination data. So maybe I want the user to be able to set those like that. And so that's just basically a basic user parameter, and hopefully we've all seen those. So let's have a look at what conditional ones are. And the first thing I'm going to mention is that we've got the parameters button now appears on the toolbar, or it can do at least. I don't know if it goes in there by default, but if you right click, customize toolbar, you should be able to add the parameters button on there. And it's improved because it used to say something like parameters editor dialog, and it was like really wide button for no reason. So we fixed that, and now it's just a regular sized button. So I've got it on there and I use it all the time now. It took me a little while to remember it's there and not go to the navigator window, but yeah. There we go, that opens that up. So this is the dialog for setting parameters now, for user parameters, for defining them and setting them up in various ways. You'll see the two we've got already, the source and the destination data. So the user gets to define those. And you'll notice we've got this little conditional visibility option that we can turn on now. But it's not going to make much sense to make those conditional. So what I'm going to do is say, well, we've got the area calculator. Maybe we want to give the user the choice of whether to calculate the area or not. So let's do that. So if I go back into the parameters, what I can do is I can come here and I can click the plus button on here, and it's got different choices of type of parameters, and I'm just going to go with the yes/no one. And I can set that up with, I'm going to call it calculate area, and we're going to call it calculate area yes no. One of the things we can do here, this is just a checkbox, so turn it on or off. You could of course use a choice instead and have a drop down menu that says yes or no, but I think the checkbox is probably the best way to do that. So we're asking the user whether they want to calculate the area, yes or no. And that, if we run the workspace, that comes up now and they can check that box. So we're giving them that choice. We're not doing anything with it yet, but we're giving them that choice in that dialog. What else might I do with that? Well, we've got the area calculator parameters, and I might think, well, I want to give the user a choice of these parameters. Like maybe I want the user to be able to pick what sort of area they want to calculate. So I could create a user parameter for that. This is another way of creating a user parameter directly. And it's called area type, and we'll just call it type of area calculation. And again, you've got that conditional visibility option. So I'm going to put a check mark against that. And what that does is it lets me say, well, I can turn that parameter on and off depending on a different parameter. So for example here I could say if calculate area is set to checked, then show that parameter is enabled, otherwise show it as disabled, because we don't need that parameter, if they don't want to calculate the area, then they don't need to set the type of area calculation. So that's conditional visibility. And if I click OK and run this workspace now, you can see if I don't calculate the area, then that's grayed out. And then I turn it on, and there it is. I can suddenly access it again. Turn it off, and I can't access it, and turn it on, and I can. So that's really the conditional parameters in a nutshell. It's a way for the author of the workspace to make the dialogue a little bit more intuitive and a little less cluttered, because the user, if they don't want to calculate the area, we don't give them that choice. It's not as cluttered, and it even get a pop-up that says this parameter is disabled based on the state or value of other parameters. The other thing we can do with that, if I go back into here and click on that, besides, what can we do besides enabled? Well, we can do disabled, or we can do hide. So I can say if we are calculating the area, then show it as enabled. If we're not, then hide it instead. And I mean, I guess it depends what sort of parameters you want to create and how you want the dialogue to look. But in this case, that other parameter doesn't even appear until I check the box like that, and then it appears. So I can appear, disappear, appear, disappear. So again, that's up to you. I mean, I'm a little bit, I don't know, it just doesn't quite sit right that the dialogue keeps resizing when you're showing and not showing that, which, I mean, it's supposed to do that. What else should it do? But I mean, for me, I think I almost prefer it disabled and appearing, but it depends on your parameters and your different instances as well. So yeah, and of course, just to bypass that, which isn't really related to what I'm showing today, but we can put a tester in and say, if the user says, what have we got? Oh no, there we go. Calculate area equals yes, because the checkbox is uppercase yes. Then we'll calculate the area. Otherwise, we'll just go around that and sort of ignore it and not calculate it. So that's how I would just make use of that in a workspace. But it's, yeah, not necessarily what we're looking at today. Yeah, so the hide function, again, I think is going to vary. It's just a comment came in, and I think it's going to be a variable whether you use it a lot or not, depending on really what you're trying to show and how big your parameter box is. Like in this case, it doesn't seem to me much point in just having that turned on and off like that. Yeah, if I got like 20 parameters in that, I'd probably say, oh, well, let's hide it instead. But since I've only got 3 or 4 anyway, I'd probably just leave it in as a disabled one. The other nice way of doing that, by the way, is instead of having that as a yes-no box like that, we can actually add it as a group box. And this works when you've got lots of different parameters inside a group box. So I can put that in there. Now you see it turns red straight away. Why is it turning red straight away? Because the calculate area parameter that I had before is lower down. Basically, it will only let me do conditional values on anything that's higher above it in that dialog. So if I move that calculate area yes no back up here, then it would be happy again because it's further up. But in fact, what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to delete it completely. And now I've got this parameter box. I'm going to call it area calc box, and the prompt is going to be area parameters. Oh, actually, no, the prompt is going to be measure area, and I'm going to change it to checkable, and conditional visibility is always going to be on. We could sort of change that. I mean, we could say if there's no source data, then don't even show it. But really, we don't have a lot of options there anyway. We've only got is and is not. It's not really a great amount of choices on there. Anyway, I don't really want that on here. What I'm more concerned about is this one. And I can go back down here to conditional visibility and say if the area calculation box is checked, then will show as enabled, otherwise we can hide it. So what I've done is basically I've got parameters now. In fact, what I can also do is the multiplier, and so well, let's add that as a parameter. Again, actually I'm going to create it, then go back into here, put it inside the box as well, and the conditional value again is going to be if the area calculator box is turned on, then show it, otherwise hide it. And now we've got that measure area box. If I turn it on, the parameters are there. I can sort of close it, open it. If I turn it off, they've gone again. So that will be a way of sort of putting multiple parameters inside a single controller to let you turn off multiple ones with the same switch. So I've been using that one quite a lot. That's a very useful piece of functionality to be able to turn that on and off like that. Really, I mean, that's the basics of it, and it is pretty simple. I mean, like I said, the only thing you've got to remember is it's got to, if you want to do a conditional visibility, the condition parameter has got to be further up in the dialog. It can't be below. So that's something to be aware of. The only fields are show as enabled, show as disabled, or hide. And really, we've only got a few different choices there. Actually, what I can do is I'm going to add an integer or a number field. We're going to say it's an integer. Okay, we've got that. And what I could do, this is just to show you, is I could say conditional if the parameter, hang on, what did I call that? Yeah, I called it parameter. Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much all we can do is to give it a value, say yes, it's on, yes, it's not, or maybe it has a particular value. And that's really the basic controls that we've got. I expect that we're going to have a bit better, a few more of these in the future. I think that's likely to happen. Can you name the group? Yeah, you can name the group. You can name the parameter that it is, and you can also give it a name like the prompt that you see in the top left. Oh, I should also mention as well that that is an actual parameter as well called area count box. So I could come back into this tester and I could say, does area count box equals yes? So I can use that same parameter, even though it's sort of a parameter for a bounding box, or whatever you want to call it, we can still use that as a parameter inside the workspace. So if I turn it on or off, depending on what we do, that can be used in the workspace to do various things. So yeah, they're, let's see. So if they don't have, see, those two are required parameters as well. If I run this workspace, let's say measure area. Oops, what did I do there? I think yeah, area calculator box is checked. Okay. So yes, so those two parameters are compulsory. We need to have them. So I can't have them not set like that. I can't have it not set. But if I turn that off and so they're hidden, I think I can still run it. Even though it's not set, it doesn't matter. So it realizes that that parameter is disabled, and therefore it being not set is fine. It sort of counts as optional, I guess, if it's not set. But yes, if it was turned on, I would need to give it a value, otherwise I wouldn't be able to run anything. But turned off is fine. So yeah, that works quite nicely. Yeah, and you can see I got it turned off because it went around a failed port, and yeah, that's all good. So that's a basic demo of what we've got there. I wanted to show a little bit more of an advanced one, and this is a tool that I've been working on. Actually, maybe we can do a live, we'll do a live demo in a minute. I just want to show you what it is first and what it does. So this is a a workspace that processes it's an assistant for GeoGuesser. You probably know GeoGuesser as the game where you go online and you see a Google Street View image and you have to figure out where it is in the world, and then you put that location on the map, and if you're right, great. And you score more points for getting the closer. We did a very similar thing at the user conference last year with an FME-based city guesser tool. So the idea is you have to guess where you are. And obviously there's lots of clues in the image, like there might be a flag of a certain color. You might notice what side of the road they're driving on, whether they're in the northern or southern hemisphere, things like that. So what I've done is I've created a workspace that is an assistant, and you can type in those parameters like there's a red flag, it's got Latin style writing, sort of Western writing, and it's in the northern hemisphere. And then it'll filter all the countries out and say, okay, well, I think it's one of these countries. So that's how that works. But of course, it makes it very useful for custom parameters. So if I rerun this, you can see right now I've got all of those parameters turned off, and we can't see any of them. I can expand it, but even if I expand them, they're still disabled. So if I click the coverage button, now it becomes active, and I can start saying, yeah, we'll include those countries, and don't include anything less than 25 square kilometers. I can say what side are they driving on. Again, it's disabled until I click the button. And this is sort of what we were talking about earlier when we said, oh, well, what happened if you had 100 parameters? It would be nice to hide them instead of disabling. That's true, but maybe if you sort of group them into sections like this, you could sort of have disable, because you'd only sort of show one or two of these panels open at a time. And even though I collapsed it, those parameters are still valid because it's still turned on. So I can say flag colors. Let's see, what flag colors can we see? Well, I can see red. So it's a red flag, blah, blah, blah. So we can do that. So yeah, so this is hopefully a good example of how you can manipulate the dialogue and set it up to show people different things depending on what options they've picked. To go into the parameters dialog for this, because I've got a couple of tips as well on this. You might notice that this is like a box, and there's a box within a box, and that's perfectly allowed. These boxes are collapsible, but you can't collapse them by clicking on them in here. Oh, actually, double click. Ah, that's the trick. I was going to say you can collapse them by right clicking and choose to collapse. Because sometimes you just want to like sort of hide all of these because you want to work on the bottom one, and so you don't want to see all of the top ones, so you can collapse that group. And I thought you had to right click and collapse and open it, but it turns out you can double click on the arrow. In fact, double click anywhere and it'll open or close it. So that's great. I didn't realize that double click worked like that either. So what we've got here is coverage, and we've got all of these parameters, and I've called the coverage outline box, I called it main box coverage, and here you can see that parameter says if main box coverage is set, then show it as enabled, otherwise show it as disabled. And the same, actually no, that parameter there works on the previous parameter, the partial coverage. Basically you say, do you want to include countries that only have partial coverage of Google Street View? And the question underneath says, do you want only unofficial coverage? Well, that question wouldn't apply unless you'd chosen the above option. So just to go back to the run dialog for that, even if I turn it on, I can't check that box unless I check that one as well. So yeah, it's a way to control what the user sees. Also a way to control what the user can enter as well. You don't confuse them. The user's not confused about this parameter and having to set it or not, because it won't even be available unless they pick the other one. And this parameter here stays on regardless of what's set above, so it's obviously independent of those two. Another tip, and it's not really to do with conditional, but what I did here was I put a helpful information box in there which says what that's about, and it's a collapsible box that just tells you what that parameter is for. And it's pretty straightforward to do those. I can just come into here and just add a box, and then this is a text window inside there. What exactly do we call it? We call it text, yeah, just a text window. And I put a help thing in there. And I thought, oh, well, yeah, that's almost a nicer way of getting a help than having to look in the help window, because it sort of puts it into the dialog. And of course, when you're using FME Flow, I should say, you wouldn't have a help window on there. So it would really be useful to show that help information box in the publish parameter dialog for the user. So that's why I put that in there. There was something else I wanted to show in here as well, and it was trying to figure out the language. I'm just shutting all the rest down. So the language is interesting because what I've got is this first setting that says, actually I can hit the preview button down here and show you. So for language, I've got 3 different options, and I want to show different choices underneath depending on those options. And if I set it up so this parameter, okay, so I do set it up as showing this parameter dependent on that, but if they were all there, what would happen is every time I change that parameter or turned it on and off, things would turn on and off, like underneath it. It'd be a bit messy, basically. So what I did here was I put 2 dummy parameters in there, and this one says show this if the box is turned off, the main box, and show this one if that first setting hasn't been set yet. So let me show you what that means. So there we've got a select a choice option. It's just a general option. Really, it's just there to give a general option because I haven't set this first one yet. So there's no way, because I haven't set that, I can't tell what I want to show the user yet. So I'm just sort of giving them a general parameter called select a choice, which is just a dummy, really. And as soon as they turn this on, and as soon as they select an option, then it replaces that dummy one with the actual one. Then if I go back to there, it just says select a choice. So again, really the reason to do that is because I've got 3 different options, and each different option will show a different parameter underneath it. So if I pinpoint the script, I know what the language is. I want to show exactly prompt. If I know generally what it is, I want to show this parameter. If I know what it isn't, I want to show that parameter. And so this is how I've chosen to set that up. It just makes it that little bit more efficient in terms of this and what I show to the user. And again, until I turn this option actually on, it doesn't show anything. And it's got the same advantages as I mentioned before. It doesn't keep causing the box to sort of expand and close every time I change this to turn it off or turn it to a different one. So that's why that's why I've got that in there. Interestingly, it doesn't really apply in FME Server. Once you've got this in FME Server, it just seems to work without those dummy ones, which haven't quite figured out yet, but I will figure it out at some point. So yeah, so that's what I've got in that one in there. Some dummy things. The flags, yeah, I think everything else is pretty much standard. Again, some of them are most of them are conditional, depending on if it's a yes or no on here. Yeah, so that's conditional parameters. So what I thought I'd do is I'd actually open up FME Flow. See, I got the name right that time. I didn't forget it. I'm going to open up FME Flow, and I'm going to actually use that tool or show you what it looks like in here. And I've got it set up as a data streaming workspace. I should have set it up as an app. I just didn't have time to do that. And you can see that these published parameters work the same way. If I turn the coverage on, then they become available, but if I turn the coverage off, then they're blanked out again. So I can't pick them. And the helpful information is in there as well, although it's not quite as nicely formatted, but it is there. Yeah, like I said with the language, it's weird. It's showing those even though they're not supposed to be shown, which I find a bit odd. And it won't let me set it back to blank either, which is another odd one. But anyway, like I said, it's a little bit different than server, but the functionality is there. You can turn things on and off, and things are dependent on the other one. So if I turn this on and turn that on, I can do that. But if I turn that off, it's sort of locked out now. And I don't think it really matters if it was on or wasn't on before. It still just says, okay, it's not selectable, therefore it's off. If it's the default value or whatever. So they've thought about that quite thoroughly. So yeah. So that's all about conditional publish parameters or conditional user parameters. Yeah, I mean, let's. Yeah, HTML formatted text work better. That's an interesting one. I wonder if I could do that. If I could say, like, if I could put HTML in here. That's an interesting thought. Like, if I could put a P tag in there. And again in there, would it actually do anything? Because I suspect most of the time you're going to want this on server. It's not on Flow. You're not going to want it on form. So let me just see if that will actually do it. Yep, I want to publish that. Data streaming. It's all good. Flip back to there. Just go back to the main page and then pick it up again from here. So coverage, helpful info. No, it doesn't look. No, look, there you go. It printed the P command. So it didn't, the P tag, it didn't, decided not to do that. So nice try, but yeah, just didn't work. But anyway, I mean, things like this, maybe we can file ideas, or you can file ideas on the community, or I can get in touch with the developers and try and get them to sort it out. I think since we're GeoGuesser, since I'm online, we may as well just sort of, okay, that's not what it's supposed to be doing. Let me shut that window down. Did I pick the wrong site there? Because that didn't look good. That's better. I don't know what I did there, but anyway. Let's play for free. Oh, it's going to make me sign in, isn't it? I think I've got... how do I sign in? Already have an account. There we go. I don't know what page I went to before. I'm going to have to look at the... I'm going to have to look at the recording and see what page I actually... oh my lord, they've changed this quite a bit. Let's just do quick play. So what we should find, hopefully, is that... okay, so... they're driving on the right. So let's see. Do I want to include countries with only partial coverage? Yes, just in case. We'll cut out anything less than 25 square kilometers because it's probably not that helpful. The driving side is on the right. Whoops. The text is Latin. In fact, it looks English, but yeah, we can say the. Oops, I keep doing that. The language is. I know what it is. It's definitely Latin script. We're looking at the text rather than the language, I guess. Do we have a flag color on here? Oh my, I've only got 4 seconds. Okay, well that that's going to mess that up. Where was it? It's not even going to show me it now. Ha! Well, that just takes the... I was going to start clicking randomly and... Oh, it wasn't even in the right continent then. Let's say South Africa. I don't know what it is. But... No, it was Japan. All I want to do is get through this and find out where that first one was. So, yeah, somewhere over there. Ah. Breakdown. So where was that first? Really? It's not going to... Okay, well, forget that. I mean, it will tell me what country it might have been. It looked like it was hard to tell the hemisphere because you couldn't see the sun in the sky. I didn't see any flags. So we can run this and it will just tell us where we were or where we might have been. And based on the countries, it was likely we were in one of these. So we didn't narrow it down a heck of a lot, but... I mean, maybe I need to add some more settings in there, like the continent, because it certainly looked like it was Africa, if you wanted to guess at that. Anyway, so I think I'm done here. I just wanted to show you that in action. So yeah, so that's all about custom parameters, conditional parameters, how they work, the fact that they work on server, on flow. I've been fine up until now, and now I'm saying server all the time. But anyway, yeah, so there we go. Have a look at that and give it a go. FME 2023, I mean, it's pretty much there now, I think, but the announcement might not be until next week or something like that, maybe the week after, but it is online, so... You should be able to use it, especially form. That's fine. I don't think there's any changes going in that particularly. So yeah, so it'll be out soon. Give this a try. As soon as it does come out, I'm going to put this as a demo on the FMA Community Cafe, and yeah, then you can give it a try for yourself. Before we finish, I just wanted to say next week Dale and I are doing a live sort of Ask Us Anything webinar. We're going to go through old support questions that didn't get an answer, but if you've got any questions you want us to try and answer on the day, then we'd be really happy to give that a go, I'm sure. So have a look at safe.com, look for the webinars, sign up for that one, and come and join us next week and laugh at our discomfort as we try and figure out what's going on and how we try and answer these questions. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you next week. I hope this was useful to you. Any things, just hit the follow button. That'd be really great. Just send a message to me. You can find me on LinkedIn or on here or anything, and I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. And next week, I can't remember what we're looking at. I think it might be the line-on-line overlayer and some of the new parameters that's got for 23. So join us next week for that. Okay, well, thanks, folks, and I will see you another time. Okay, take care.